Good afternoon YouTube and welcome back to the channel. Long time no see, it's been a minute or two. Now, the Royal Enfield Himalayan that I have here is discharging. The battery's not holding a charge and I've got a couple of components here that I'm looking to install on the bike. I've got a regulator rectifier and I've also got a stator or a stator. Now I may or may not need this, but I reckon I definitely need this. Just to quickly talk you through the symptoms of this, folks, the battery's not holding a charge, and when I have my little voltmeter on here, you see this is sitting around, well, it's difficult to see actually, but it sits around about 11 and a half. What essentially happens is the battery light comes on, and that'll stay on for maybe a minute or two, and then the battery starts to recharge, but not very much. It takes it up to just under 12 volts. So the battery light goes out. Then after a few minutes of riding, maybe 5 minutes or so, the battery light comes back on again. Now when you want to diagnose something like this, there's a couple of simple things you can look at first. Is it enough battery? Well, the battery on this bike it's less than a month old, to be honest, so it's highly unlikely that it's that. It could be that your terminals are loose, your battery terminals, so just make sure they're cranked down nice and tight. Again, that's not an issue. Or it could be a bad earth or a broken wire somewhere. So again, you want to just go through all that and have a look at it. The most common and the most likely culprit is your regulator rectifier. It takes the electrical energy produced in your stator, which is produced by the crankshaft turning. So the faster you go, the more energy or the more electricity is produced. Now that can produce up to maybe 18 or 19 volts if you're going at quite some click. So what this essentially does is it takes that alternating current and it converts it into DC so that it's safe for your battery and safe for the rest of your electrical components on the bike. But it also reduces that power down. And what this does with the surplus is it converts it to heat. That's why it's shaped like a heat sink. But of course that can damage it over time. If you're running hard, fast and long, really hot weather like we've had here for quite some time in Scotland, they can burn out the diodes, the capacitors inside. So if you've got 18 volts coming from your starter straight into the battery, it's going to fry the battery and the rest of the electrics on the bike quite quickly. So this reduces that down to a safe voltage level, anywhere between 12 to 14 volts, and we'll see that once we connect this up and have a look at it. Hopefully it'll be sitting where we need it to be. Compared to the other components on the bike, this one stands out a little bit. It's starting to go white, and that white is caused by heat. It's also starting to delaminate. Now the battery's sitting at around 11.2 volts at the moment, so I'm going to actually remove the battery because there's not enough juice in there to actually turn the bike over to even start it. So there's no point really changing the rectifier and the starter if I then can't start the bike. I would need to bump start it. So I'm going to take the battery out and I'm going to put it on charge. If you've been subscribed to the channel for any length of time, folks, you're probably wondering where I've been and what I've been up to. It's been quite a while, to say the least, since I last uploaded a video. Just life, in all honesty. You know, things tend to happen, then you lose track of time and things like that. But anyway, we're back into starting making videos again. And I'm actually planning a trip around Europe in a few weeks' time. So I'm going to take the Himalayan around Europe for about 3.5 weeks towards the end of July. So obviously we'll be doing some preparation videos and we'll be doing videos for that as well once we get started. This is the AC input. So, AC comes from your starter, alternator, call it what you like. And here, this plug here with the 2 pins, this is our DC output. And this one here is our DC ground with a single pin here. And this little one at the bottom here, this is our earth, the AC earth. And that just goes onto the chassis of the bike somewhere. Again, doing jobs like this, it's always a good idea to disconnect the battery. I've removed the battery because I've got that on charge whilst I'm doing the job. And you'll see that there's 2 bolts here, essentially, go in to hold this in place. I've just left it loose. This is the brake fluid, or the rear brake fluid reservoir, and that's just to give me a little bit of space to work this bottom bolt out. When we take this off, let's move this. See this? Hopefully you can see that now. There's the two rings there. That's the earth wire. The bottom one is coming from the rectifier and the top one is an earth wire from the bike. So both of those want to go back on there once we put this back together. Okay, so here's the earth that we were talking about. This is the one that's attached to the regulator itself. Here's the other one. You can see it easier now. This is really bad condition. As you can see, it's starting to delaminate. Safe to say that's fried. I'm going to stick a voltmeter on it. We'll have a look at it anyway, just out of interest. Now, it's just a matter now of disconnecting the various wires that are holding this in place. We've all got little locking mechanisms. They're not difficult, just takes a couple of seconds, but you know, it's always useful to use a tool rather than, you know, big fat thumbs like I've got. So around the other side of the bike, just helps us to see better. You can see now we need to disconnect this wire here. So we've disconnected that double pin. We've disconnected that single. The AC in from the alternator down here. You can see the red lug. We need to unlock that. Okay, so here we have them side by side. You'll never guess which one is new. See, there's a little bit of variation, a bit of difference between the two, but they essentially do the same thing. Two lugs there, we pull them out. And that's how these, you know, lock or unlock in place. It's not difficult. The two earth wires are on through here. Just threaded this in. I'm just going to put this top bolt in finger tight, and I'll do the same with the bottom one as well. You don't need to over tighten it. That's nice, solid in there. Dead straightforward. This goes to this, that locks down. Okay, that's it all connected again. Now I'm not going to start cable wrapping these at the moment because I'm going to put the battery in. Just want to start the bike up and see where we stand with regards to the electrics. Okay, the battery's been on charge for about 40 minutes, so of course it's nowhere near fully charged. It's in about 11.9. That's enough to get the bike to turn over. That'll start the bike at least, and then we'll be able to see whether or not that regulator is starting to recharge the battery again. Alright guys, moment of truth. Okay. Perfect. So there you have it folks. On the surface at least it would appear that this is the problem, or the main problem, if not the only problem. In case you're wondering, I already did the diagnostics. I had the voltmeter on this a couple of weeks ago before I ordered the part. Coming from India, it's going to take a couple of weeks to get here. What I'm less sure of is the condition of the stator, or the stator. Obviously the bike's charging all right, but I'm still really curious. I bought one anyway. I'm still really curious to take that off and have a really good look at it. Whether it needs replaced or not, regardless, it's a fantastic thing to have in terms of, you know, a backup as a spare, if you like, because that burns out, your bike's not running, and if you need to then get those parts, you need, you know, book it in at a dealer, especially at this time of year. It can take a long time. It takes a couple of weeks to get the parts from, you know, overseas or whatever. I also took the liberty of removing the auxiliaries. I took the power hub out, disconnected the heated grips, I took the auxiliary lights off. Anything like that that would have a draw on the battery. Obviously it's not charging already, so you need to, the first thing you need to do is get all that stuff off there. Going forward, as I say, I'm going to be looking at preparation for my trip around Europe. It's a 3-week trip. It's not huge, but I'm going to take in a fair few countries. It should be really quite interesting. Hopefully get in some of the Trans-Euro trail as well as we go along.